To you, Dan Jenkins-Jones, who's going to give us an RSPB update. And without further ado, if you can hear it. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me back? Oh, wow, I'll be as well. That's fine. Thank you, Bob. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Thank you very much. WOS, thank you very much for the opportunity to come and address the conference again this year. Thanks also to Yoro. I think he's disappeared by now, I think. But thanks to Yoro for giving us a few RSPB headlines in the update that he gave earlier on this morning. So I'll just give you a brief whistle-stop tour of a few things that we've, a few headlines from 2016. And without a shadow of doubt, really, I think that the highlight of the year for the staff working for the RSPB, and I guess for everybody in the room today, was the return of bittern as a breeding species here in Wales. It's been a long time coming, and it's testimony really to the hard work that Ian Hawkins and his team, who manage the RSPB's wetland reserves on Anglesey, the Valley Wetlands and Mathrife. It's really testimony to the hard work that they've done. Because bittern last bred in Wales back in 1984, and then the RSPB purchased Mathrife 10 years later in 1994, and the reserve's primary objective was to produce sufficient breeding habitat to sustain breeding bittern and manage the grass for lapwing. So this is what Mathrife looked like back in 1994. Poor farmland, some nice wet kind of marshy areas, some potential, etc. And this is what it looks like today, considerably better, more attractive to bittern, I'm sure you agree. So, following on from the single booming male that we had at Valley Wetlands last year, two booming males were heard at Valley this year, with one bird actually present throughout the whole of the breeding season. But unfortunately, there was no evidence of any breeding this year, so fingers crossed for Valley for next year. Whereas at Mathrife, three birds turned up on the reserve really late in the day. There was hardly any booming whatsoever, and the team there had basically kind of given up the ghost that there were going to be any breeding bitterns on the reserve again this year. But the pattern of flights led us to believe that there may have been a nest. The birds were watched, and yet a nest was deduced, and then throughout the rest of the year, rest of the breeding season, there were further watches made, and we were able to prove that at least two chicks were fledged from that nest. So absolutely brilliant news. Dyfal donc a dirogareg, they say in Welsh. Kind of goes to show you that good things come to those who wait. I can top Yolo's news this morning. He told you that there was one breeding pair of marsh harriers at Mathrife this year. In fact, there were two breeding pairs, and one fledged three chicks, one nest fledged three chicks, and the other nest fledged one chick, and both females shared one male. Testimony again, as I say, to the work done by Ian Hawkins and the team there. Slightly less good news for black grouse in 2015. We were all celebrating last year when there were 411 lecking males. This year there were just 61 lecking males. The conservation team think that this is down to the fact that the weather in June 2015, the previous breeding season, wasn't very good, and that clearly is obviously a very important month for the chicks in terms of whether they survive or not. But there were better news from Vyrnwy, where there were 11 lecking black grouse this year. That's up from 6 in 2015, and the highest count that we've had there since 2011. Sorry, those are the figures. While I'm at it, if I can use this opportunity really to give a quick plug, we're looking for volunteers to join us next year, around about early April, to count lecking black grouse. It's a fantastic experience. If you've never done it, we'd love to hear with you. If you're interested, please either come and have a chat with me in the break, or you can go up to our stand up there, and there's a little kind of form up there. If you can register your interest on the form up there, we'll get back to you. And while we're here, I'm making a plug for volunteers. We also need volunteers as well for butterfly monitoring at Ynys nest watching in northwest Wales, wildlife gardening, if we've got a few fingers, at South Stack and Conwy. And I've got to say this for Julian, we're looking for a Wild About Nature volunteer at Conwy as well. Julian's here, site manager, would be delighted to hear from you if you're interested. So, as I said, interested in any of those, in particular black grouse, please register your interest up there. Yes, really sorry to bring the mood down a little bit, but I've got to bring this up because this is one of the things that really did impact upon the RSPB's work and the conservation sector's work in 2016. As if it wasn't hard enough to get nature onto the political agenda, it's very probable, or kind of definite, that the result of the EU referendum will make the conservation sector's ambitions even harder to deliver in the future. Just within RSPB Cymru, within the last few months, because the result of the EU referendum and then plus the uncertainty that follows that, we've already had to look again as to whether we can progress upon two ambitious habitat management projects that we were hoping to deliver with partners up in North Wales, because we were hoping that that was going to be funded by EU money. So again, it's having quite a knock-on effect on us. And if I can say down in Cardiff Bayland for a minute, an optimist would say that Wales now has a major opportunity to better incorporate benefits of environment and nature within any future payments for farmers, the new Gloucester and agri-environment, if you like. So the Climate Change, Environment and Rural Affairs Committee is holding an inquiry at the moment, post-Brexit, into the future of agriculture and rural development policy. And there's a proposal, so I'm mentioning this to you today, that there's going to be a public consultation very soon as part of that inquiry. And the RSPB will be campaigning to get folk to write to their assembly members and just to tell them what they think that is needed to be included in that future policy. So please look out for that opportunity, and when it arises, clearly please engage in that process, because this really could be out of kind of a challenging position, so we say, with the referendum result. It could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make things better. Back to birds, probably glad to hear that. And one species that will certainly benefit from a sustainable land management in Wales is a lapwing. We know that in serious trouble across Wales, but I'm delighted to say that the lapwing this year continues to do well on the RSPB reserves in Wales. I can tell you that there were 194 pairs bred on RSPB owned land in 2016. That's up from 148 pairs in 2015. And that figure, the 194 pairs, does include 14 pairs at Penllyn, land that we acquired at the north shore of the Dyfi at the end of last year. So brilliant news. And then amongst the headlines for lapwing, if I could continue, is another record season at Mathtraeth. The highest ever number of breeding pairs there, 42 pairs this year, from 36 pairs in 2015, and really, really brilliant productivity there again from the team. And I'm talking about productivity. Great celebrations at Ynys where, as you can see, last year's productivity of 0.08 was pretty low, pretty horrible really. However, this year's productivity is up to 1.4 per pair, twice the productivity needed for a stable population. Just briefly going to touch on willowtit, just moving away from those iconic, kind of well-known, high-profile species. Just want to kind of introduce a project that we've just started at Lake Vyrnwy, which is where we're colouring willow tits to try and better understand their movement and their behaviours. It's early days, but we found 12 willow tit territories and colouring to 27 birds since April 2015. And really good news this year is that 2 pairs actually bred in nest boxes that we'd specially produced for willow tits, and I'm sure all of us know in the room that willow tits don't take very readily to nest boxes. So that's brilliant news. So as I say, it's early days. Hopefully I'll be here next year or in following years and able to share with you a little bit about what we've learned about willow tit. Those of you who were at Carno last year may have remembered Karen Robertson's presentation about our Giving Nature Home in Cardiff project. This is a project that we deliver with Cardiff City Council, helping to engage children with nature. You heard your earlier say that Wales's children are the least connected with nature across the whole of the UK. So to date, we have managed to give 20,000 children in Cardiff a hands-on experience with nature. And when I mean hands-on, I'm talking hands dirty, clothes dirty, going home and get your clothes washed, mum, sorry. But it's not an academic exercise. It really is trying to get them to be engaged with nature. And the team continue to be innovative. The team, you would have heard Carol last year mention about this project, TAPE, this massive kind of spider's cocoon that we built with partners in Bute Park, which attracted 70,000 people. This year, slightly less in size but no less ambitious, was an event called In the Eyes of the Animal. Again, it's just trying to get young people in particular engaged with nature. And In the Eyes of the Animal was a virtual reality tour of nature. I tried it myself, it's pretty incredible. 3,000 people, mainly children, young people and families, went to Bute Park in Cardiff and put these funny things on their head. And they saw the world through virtual reality through the eyes of a mosquito, a dragonfly, a toad, and an owl. And I was there and I witnessed it myself, the faces of the children when they took these masks off. They were absolutely buzzing. You'd think they'd been on some drugs or some tartrazine or something, but it really was worthwhile. And the reason we're doing this, trying these different ways of trying to engage young people with nature, is hopefully that just sows a seed in their minds that sometime later in future years that seed will blossom and they will have that love of nature that we've all got here in the room. Back to birds very, very quickly. We've got news on hen harriers. I'm afraid I haven't got the full scarabs. The big count that we did this year, I haven't got the full details with me. But good news from Gwenfrey Dinas is that we had a breeding pair there this year, and I've checked with Graham in the room here, haven't I, that is, as far as we know, the first breeding pair of hen harrier that we've ever had at Gwenfrey Dinas. Well, they attempted to breed, unfortunately. They were predated at the egg stage, but hopefully they'll come back next year and breed successfully. Also a hint that there are short-eared owls actually nesting on Gwenfrey Dinas again this year, but on the reserve. And finally, the last headline, Manx shearwaters. We undertake a count of Manx shearwaters, breeding Manx shearwaters on Ramsey Island once every 5 years, and this year the figure 4,796 is, 25% higher than the count back in 2012. And as you can see, the count in 1998, the year before we did the rat eradication programme, was 850 pairs. So absolutely brilliant news from Manx shearwaters. So that's it. I could have squeezed, well, I could have liked to have been here for another 10 minutes or so, but that's just a few headlines from RSPB Cymru from 2016. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Randall. Thank you for listening.